The photograph sits in the archives of the Haverton Historical Society. At first glance, it appears ordinary, a stark black and white image from 1897. The setting is the front steps of a large brick building. 10 children stand in 2 neat rows. Their faces are somber. Their clothes are clean but worn. Above them, on the top step, stands a tall man in a dark suit. His expression is stern. His posture is rigid. This is the Blackwood Industrial Home for Foundlings. The man is Superintendent Elias Thorne. The photo was commissioned for a prospectus. Wealthy donors would see this image. They would see order. They would see cleanliness. They would see discipline. They would see Christian charity at work. The photograph was meant to be welcoming. It was meant to show success. It was meant to prove that the orphanage was worthy of financial support. For over a century, it seemed like nothing more than a historical curiosity, a window into the past, a glimpse of Victorian institutional life. Nothing remarkable, nothing unusual. But something is wrong with this photograph. The viewer is asked to count the children. There are 10 visible in the frame. Freya stands in the front row, second from the left. Her hair is pulled back tightly. Piper is beside her. Her hands are folded neatly. Valeria stands at the end of the back row. Her expression is blank. Arya is in the center. She looks directly at the camera. Adeline stands near the edge. Her posture is perfect. Everly is next to the superintendent. She is the tallest girl. Genevieve is in the front. She is the youngest. George stands tall in the back. His face is serious. Caden is to his right. His coat is buttoned to the collar. Jonah completes the group. He stands at attention. 10 children. The count is clear. The number is certain. But now the viewer is asked to look down. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the ground. The shadows stretch from the steps toward the camera. Each shadow is distinct. Each shadow is sharp. The physics are consistent. The light source is single and clear. The angle matches perfectly. The shadows are counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 shadows, 10 children. 2 shadows have no bodies. Professor Eleanor Vance is a specialist in historical photography. She teaches at a university in the state capital. She has examined thousands of 19th century photographs. She has seen every kind of technical error and printing defect. She was contacted about this image. She has examined the original glass plate negative. She confirms the anomaly is real. It is not a scanning error. It is not a digital artifact. It is not damage to the plate. The shadows exist on the original plate from 1897. She explains that glass plate photography in that era used long exposure times. The camera had to remain perfectly still. The subjects had to remain motionless for many seconds, sometimes for a full minute. Any movement would blur. Any shift would create ghosting. But this is not a blur. This is not ghosting. These are 2 complete, child-sized shadows with no corresponding bodies. The shadows are as sharp as the others. They have the correct proportions. The physics of the light are correct. The angle is consistent with the other shadows. They belong to the same moment in time. They were created by the same sun. Professor Vance states a simple fact. 10 bodies, 12 shadows. The mathematics are wrong. The optics are impossible. This is not a ghost story. This is a mystery that has an answer rooted in history. The question becomes simple. Was this a technical mistake by the photographer? Did Marcus Henslow make an error? Did he accidentally double expose the plate? Or did the camera capture something that Superintendent Elias Thorne wanted to hide? Did the photograph reveal a secret? The answer is not supernatural. It is not paranormal. It is found in the records. It is found in the ledgers and journals and newspaper articles. It is found in the history of the Blackwood Industrial Home and the town it served. The truth is waiting in the archives. Haverton in 1897 was an industrial town. Dr. Elias Thorne is a local historian. He has spent decades researching the area. He is also a descendant of Superintendent Elias Thorne. This fact is not hidden. He is open about his family connection. He describes the town as it was in the late 19th century. Factories dominated the skyline. Smokestacks reached into the gray sky. The air was thick with coal smoke. The streets were crowded with workers. Immigrants and migrants filled the tenements. Poverty was everywhere. Disease was common. Death was a constant presence. Children were orphaned by tuberculosis and typhoid. They were orphaned by factory accidents. Fathers were crushed by machinery. Mothers died in childbirth. The orphan rate was extremely high. The Blackwood Industrial Home was founded by a local industrialist in 1885. It was presented to the public as a beacon of hope. Newspaper articles praised it. Editorials celebrated it. Sermons from local churches commended it. It was supposed to save children. It was supposed to give them shelter and education. It was supposed to prepare them for productive lives. Dr. Elias Thorne admits he's trying to reconcile his family history. His ancestor was celebrated as a humanitarian. Streets were named after him. But there were always rumors, dark rumors, whispers about where the children really went. He wants to know the truth. He wants the historical record to be accurate. Ms. Rebecca Fry is a genealogist. She specializes in 19th century records. She was hired to identify the 10 children in the photograph. The work is difficult. Records from 1897 are incomplete. Many documents have been lost, others are damaged, but she begins. She cross-references census data from 1900. She searches city directories. She examines shipping manifests and church baptismal records. She looks through poorhouse registers and cemetery logs. Slowly, piece by piece, she finds them. Freya was adopted by a farming family in the next county in 1899. Piper aged out of the system at 16. Valeria died of scarlet fever in 1898. Arya was placed with a farm family in 1900. Adeline appears in later census records as a domestic servant working in the city. Everleigh married young at age 17. Genevieve died of pneumonia in the winter of 1899. George became a factory worker at the Haverton textile mill. Caden moved west to work on the railroads. Jonah lived into old age and died in 1954. The 10 children in the photograph are accounted for. Their lives were hard. Their records are sparse. Many lived in poverty, but they existed. They are real. They left traces. This deepens the mystery. This makes the anomaly more troubling. If these 10 children are accounted for, who do the 2 extra shadows belong to? Where did they come from? Why are they not in the picture? The investigation turns to Superintendent Elias Thorne. Dr. Elias Thorne has access to private family papers. These documents were kept in an attic for generations. He has found financial records. He has found correspondence. Publicly, Elias Thorne was praised. The local newspaper called him a pillar of the community. He was described as a man of stern Christian virtue. He attended church every Sunday. He gave speeches about moral education. He was respected. But the private ledgers tell a different story. The financial records of the Blackwood Industrial Home are meticulous. Every penny is accounted for. Dr. Elias Thorne shows the entries. There are large payments coming into the orphanage. The payments are regular. They arrive monthly. They come from the Haverton textile mill, the largest factory in town. The mill employed over 300 workers. The payments are labeled apprentice fees. Each payment is substantial. Dr. Elias Thorne explains what this means. Apprenticeship in the 1890s was often a euphemism. It meant child labor. Children were sent to factories. They were unpaid or paid pennies. They were worked 12 to 14 hours a day. The system was brutal. It was largely unregulated. There were no labor laws protecting children. The mill was paying the orphanage for a steady supply of children. The orphanage was selling its wards. The photographer was Marcus Henslow. He was a commercial photographer in Haverton. He took portraits and documented events. Dr. Elias Thorne found his journal in the state archives. The journal is leather-bound and water-stained. The entry for the day of the photograph is revealing. The date is marked clearly. Marcus Henslow complains about the assignment. He writes that the pay was poor. He writes that Elias Thorne was difficult to work with. He calls him a tyrant. He describes how the superintendent stood over him. He notes that the superintendent barked orders at the children. He treated them like soldiers. Then comes the critical detail. Marcus Henslow writes that Elias Thorne kept changing the lineup. He writes that the director pulled two of the dirtier ones out at the last moment. He specifically uses the word dirtier. He writes that this ruined the first plate. The photographer was frustrated. He had already set up the shot. The exposure had begun. But he had to stop. He had to reset. He had to start over. But this note is evidence. Two children were removed from the photograph. They were described as dirtier than the others. They stood out. They did not fit. They were pulled out just before the exposure was complete. There is more evidence. Mr. Silas Croft was an investigative journalist in the 1890s. He ran a small newspaper in Haverton called The Working Man's Advocate. He was not wealthy. He printed the paper himself. He was not popular with the town elite. He wrote about factory conditions. He criticized the mill owners. He advocated for workers. In 1898, 1 year after the photograph, he published an article. Dr. Elias Thorne has found a copy in a library collection. The paper is yellowed and fragile. The headline reads, "The Ghost Children of Haverton Mill." The article makes serious allegations. Mr. Silas Croft claimed that the Haverton textile mill was using unaccounted child laborers. He wrote that these children came from the orphanage. He claimed they were kept off the books. They were hidden from inspectors. They were given the most dangerous jobs. They cleaned machinery while it was still running. They crawled into spaces too small for adults. They worked in the sorting rooms where the air was thick with cotton dust. They worked in conditions that adult workers refused. The article was explosive. It named names. It accused Elias Thorne directly. But it was dismissed. The mill owner called it slander. He threatened legal action. Elias Thorne called it lies. He called it an attack on Christian charity. The town elites closed ranks. Mr. Silas Croft was discredited. His advertisers pulled their support. His newspaper folded within the year. He left town. The story was forgotten. The allegations were buried. Ms. Rebecca Fry changes her approach. She stops trying to identify the children in the photograph. Instead, she searches the intake ledgers for the Blackwood Industrial Home. She focuses on the week of the photograph. The ledgers are held at the county courthouse. They are stored in a basement vault. She finds two names, Grayson and Hunter. Their intake forms are still on file. The handwriting is neat and precise. They arrived on the same day. The date is 3 days before the photograph was taken. The forms are brief. Grayson was 7 years old. Hunter was 8. Both were listed as foundlings. No parents, no family, no known relatives. The forms show they were admitted to the orphanage. They were given identification numbers. But Ms. Rebecca Fry finds something disturbing. There is no discharge record, no adoption papers, no transfer documents, no death certificate, no burial record. After the intake form, Grayson and Hunter disappear completely from all official records. They vanish without a trace. It is as if they never existed beyond that single piece of paper. The evidence is assembled. 2 extra shadows in the photograph. 2 children removed from the lineup by Elias Thorne. 2 children described as dirty. 2 children who arrived at the orphanage just days before the photograph and then vanished from all records. A mill paying the orphanage substantial fees for ghost laborers. A journalist claiming children were being used and hidden. The pieces fit together. The pattern is clear. But the final piece comes from Dr. Elias Thorne. He reveals what happened 3 days after the photograph was taken. A massive fire consumed the Haverton textile mill. The fire started in the evening. It spread quickly. The building was made of wood and brick. It was filled with cotton and oil. The flames were visible for miles. The building was destroyed. The damage was total. The official report listed 2 adult fatalities. Both were identified as mill workers. The fire was ruled an industrial accident. A lamp was blamed. The investigation was brief. The mill owner wanted to rebuild quickly, but Dr. Elias Thorne found more. He located the unpublished notes of Mr. Silas Croft. The journalist had continued his investigation even after his article was dismissed. Even after his newspaper failed, the notes are kept in a private collection. They were donated by a descendant. The notes contain testimony. The witness is anonymous. The journalist protected his source. The notes refer to the witness only as a mill worker. The name used in the notes is Graham. Graham claimed the fire started in the sub-basement sorting room. This was where the youngest workers were sent. Graham stated that Elias Thorne was at the mill that day. He was seen in the afternoon. He was seen arguing with the foreman. The argument was heated. Graham alleged that 2 of the little ones from the orphanage were trapped in the basement when the fire started. Graham claimed the exits were locked. The mill locked doors to prevent theft. Graham stated that the official report was a cover-up. The mill owner and Elias Thorne wanted to hide what happened. Graham stated that 2 children died in that fire, children who were not supposed to exist, children who had no families to ask questions. Professor Eleanor Vance is given all of this context. She examines the photograph again with new eyes. She studies the shadows. She measures the angles. She considers the timeline. She presents a theory. The theory explains the shadows. The theory fits all the evidence. The photo shoot began with all 12 children present. This included Grayson and Hunter. They were the dirty ones mentioned in the photographer's journal. They had likely come straight from the mill. They still had cotton dust on their clothes. They still smelled of machine oil. They were placed with the other children for the photograph. The photographer, Marcus Henslow, prepared his camera. He arranged the composition. He checked the light. The exposure began. The shutter opened. But Elias Thorne realized his mistake. He had mixed his populations. His mill children were standing with his donor children. The children meant to be hidden were about to be documented. He panicked. He stopped the process. He shouted at the photographer. He ordered Grayson and Hunter to be removed from the frame immediately. Marcus Henslow had to reset. He was angry. His work was interrupted. But here is the key. He may not have used a fresh glass plate. Glass plates were expensive. Photographers often tried to salvage an exposure if it was only partially begun. Or, more likely, Grayson and Hunter were in the frame for the first few seconds of a long exposure before they were pulled away. Professor Vance explains how glass plate photography works. The technology is based on a chemical reaction. Silver salts on the glass react to light. The exposure captures all light over time. If a subject moves, they blur. The movement is recorded as a ghostly trace. If a subject is only present for a moment, they may not appear at all. Their bodies were not still long enough. They were removed too quickly. But their shadows were different. Shadows are cast on bright surfaces. The ground in front of the steps was sunlit. The sun was low and strong. The shadows were dark and sharp. They created high contrast. Even a brief exposure captures high contrast. The shadow of Grayson and the shadow of Hunter burned onto the plate in those first seconds. The darkness where they stood was recorded. When the boys were pulled away, their bodies left no trace. The exposure was too brief, but the absence of light where they had stood remained. Their shadows were captured permanently. Even though they were erased from the composition, their shadows stayed. The chemical reaction had already occurred. The plate had already recorded them. Elias Thorne removed the boys, but he could not remove their shadows. The mystery is solved. The two extra shadows are not supernatural. They are not a trick of light. They are not a printing error. They are the last photographic evidence of Grayson and Hunter. Two children who were brought to the Blackwood Industrial Home, two children who were immediately sent to work in the Haverton textile mill, two children who were not meant to be seen by wealthy donors, two children who were pulled from the photograph at the last moment, two children who died 3 days later in a fire that was deliberately covered up. Dr. Elias Thorne delivers the final statement. The photograph was meant to be propaganda. It was meant to show the success of Elias Thorne and his institution. It was meant to attract donors and deflect criticism. It was meant to show happy, healthy children being saved by Christian charity. Instead, it became a confession. It became evidence. It is the only proof that links Elias Thorne to Grayson and Hunter. The orphanage was not a charity. It was a business. It was a front. It laundered children for industrial labor. It provided disposable workers to the mill. The welcoming photo is not what it seems. It is a crime scene. It is a memorial. It is a gravestone. The photograph is no longer ordinary. It is no longer just a historical curiosity. It is a memorial to two children whose existence was deliberately erased, two children whose names were removed from history, two children whose deaths were covered up. Dr. Elias Thorne speaks about the nature of history. He speaks about how difficult it is to uncover the truth. The truth often hides in plain sight. It hides in details that seem meaningless. It hides in anomalies that cannot be explained until the right context is found. It hides in shadows. The story of the Blackwood Industrial Home is not unique. It is not an isolated case. It is a reminder of a brutal era. The Industrial Revolution consumed countless vulnerable lives. Children were considered disposable. Their labor was cheap. Their lives were worth nothing. Their deaths were covered up. Factories and mills and mines used children until they broke. Orphanages and poorhouses supplied the labor. The system was designed to exploit. Grayson and Hunter were two of many. Thousands of children disappeared into the industrial machine. But Grayson and Hunter left something behind. They left a shadow that could not be erased, a shadow that survived. The records of the Blackwood Industrial Home are now digitized. They are available online. Millions of photographs from the 1890s are being scanned and archived. Historical societies and libraries are making their collections public. The technology exists to examine these images in detail. The question becomes clear. What other stories are hiding in the shadows of old photographs? What other truths are waiting to be discovered? What other crimes are documented in images that were meant to conceal them? The viewer is invited to share their thoughts. They are invited to look at old photographs with new eyes. They are invited to subscribe for more hidden histories. The photograph of the Blackwood Industrial Home is a lesson. It teaches that evidence can survive even when the powerful try to erase it. It teaches that the truth leaves traces. Sometimes the truth is captured in a shadow. Sometimes a shadow is enough.